everyone, Sarah here. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me this evening as I attempt to do my first ever deep dive ink video. I put a poll up on my YouTube a couple of weeks ago saying, what would you like to see? Is this something you'd be interested in? And the suggestion that got the most votes was something fun and funky. This is my interpretation of fun and funky, so I hope you guys agree. I'm not super outrageous with my inks, but for me this is fun and a little bit out there. My hope is that these videos will be in-depth but also short. Like, I'd love for this to be like a 10-minute deep dive, kind of thing. Really wanting to hear your feedback. I kind of have a plan in my head of how I want it to go, but I've also I try not to overthink it, and I'm just really going with it. So if you have any feedback, just pop a comment down below. So without further ado, the ink that I have chosen to do is an ancient song ink called Incense. I've also seen it listed as offering incense. I got my sample from the Desk Bandit and they call it Incense, so that is what I'm going to go with. It is a green ink with a shimmer, but what I am going to do quite purposefully is I'm actually not going to agitate it just yet. I want to do a sample just to really see what that base green is, and then I'll do some once I've agitated it. Also then going to do some writing samples in two different pens, my trusty Pilot dip pen, which is a fine nib, and then I've just put my 1.1 nib on this calligraphy. Oh, that pen's a bit dirty. I'm going to clean that. There must be ink in the cap. And we will see if I can do some writing with that as well. What I thought I would do first, though, is just chat through the ink itself. So Ancient Song is an ink brand, a Chinese ink brand, and what they do is they actually name all their inks after poems and poets from different dynasties. And the description of Incense, again, I'm getting straight from the Desk Bandit website, so do check them out if you want more info. But it says, so this ink is for the writer Su Shi of the Song dynasty. It describes the author's desire to get rid of their troubles and retreat to contemplate the meaning of life and birth, which is a pretty cool meaning. I thought what we'd do first is some ink samples with my trusty measuring cup. Right before I started filming, my syringe broke, so I'm going to try and dip onto the page with a paintbrush and we'll see how that goes. I'm doing this is just a blank piece of 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. So the first one I want to do is without agitating it, so we can really just look at that green. So hopefully I can get like a drip with this. All right, so straight off the bat, what I see is a medium green. I think that kind of borders on a tealy aqua. You can definitely see the undertones of blue in there. And in that sample, I really can't see any shimmer at all. But right in the middle there, I can actually see hints of yellow as well. So that is interesting. What I'm going to do now is agitate the bottle and try really hard to get more ink on the page. Something I realized completely by mistake with the syringe and using the measuring cup to do samples is I was trying to do like a few different size drops, and so the first one was left there a bit longer before I went around with the measuring cup, and by pooling there, it actually then, when I did the measuring cup, a lot of the shimmer stayed in the middle, and you could kind of see for that sample like how much shimmer was in it, which I thought was interesting as well. It kind of, for me, gave an indication of how shimmery a certain ink is. So I'm going to try and do that as well. Hopefully it works, but I definitely need to get more ink down. It's a gold shimmer. You can see that in the cap there. And I think there might be quite a bit that's really staying down the bottom there. Just looking at that ink as it dries, it definitely pools darker, but I think also pools greener. Like in the lighter bits, I see more of that blue aqua, but there where it's pooled, I do see that as a truer green. But you can definitely see it has some blue in it. All right, let's give this a go now. So what I'm going to do, if you just bear with me, I'm going to try and get more ink down. So that one I'm actually going to leave. And down here, I'm going to do another one. So with a bit more ink and now with the shimmer through it. Wow, so I'm not going to lift up the page because I want that one to just sit for a little bit and see how that shimmer settles. What jumped out at me straight away is the yellow of the gold shimmer automatically makes it look greener. Without that shimmer in it, the blue really sings through. But then for me, even where it's pooling, but you look around it, the way the gold, which really has an undertone of yellow, is interacting there, makes the ink as a whole for me look greener. See if you can see it in the camera there. When it dries, I lift it up. But if you look at how that bit is pooling there, you can really see the yellow sing through, and I'm not using words like teal or aqua to describe that bit at all. It'd be really interesting to see what happens when it dries though. I think this ink has a pretty decent amount of shimmer. I'm learning, I guess, about myself that I love shimmer inks that have a good amount but aren't overpowering and don't look sparkly. I think, it's nuanced, but the word shimmer versus sparkly is important to me. I like that there are parts of this swatch, that don't have shimmer or don't have a lot, and even where it is quite dense, it still looks, I want to say classy, which is a weird way to describe it, but for me, if things looked super sparkly, I actually think it would look a little bit tacky, and that's just my personal style. I don't like tons of sparkle. I don't even really like tons of color. This is, I'm really trying to push myself with ink here. I like more the muted, darker things. So trying to use shimmer inks and trying to broaden my horizon around color is, it can be quite challenging. And there's something about where it just looks a bit subtle and just thoughtful that I like a bit better. So perfect example is that bit there I like a lot more than where it's super pooly and chunky there. So what I'm going to do now is, hopefully that one has been sitting long enough that I'm just going to, didn't leave myself too much space. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so don't know if you can see that right in the center there, but if you leave, and I saw this really just by mistake, if you leave the drip there a little bit longer, the shimmer, as it would just in the sample bottle, sinks to the bottom because it's heavier. So then when you do your sample, it kind of doesn't spread out as evenly. And for me, that's kind of a truer representation of how much shimmer is in it versus that's just tons of ink, so it's pooling. The ink is still spread out there. So for me, and look, this could all be baloney and not have any merit at all, but in my head and the way I see it, it works. So for me, I would say that this ink has quite a bit of shimmer in it. It looks like really small particles. I don't know enough about shimmer to know if it does come in different sized particles, but even where it's collecting, it doesn't look like one glob of gold. You can see the texture of all the little bits in there. As I'm bringing it up now, see if you can see what I mean about for me, without the gold there, it just rings so much more blue. And then as you look, once the shimmer's in, that gold yellow really changes the way, for me, my eyes read the green. Where it's really pooling, to me, that looks almost like a forest green in there, like there's no blue at all. If I turn over, these two had more ink than this one. You can see where it's pooled, but the other bits of the swatch was done really well. That's really only little bits of bleed through there. So now I will agitate again and let's have a write with it. Wasn't the best sentence in the world. All right, so the first pen I am using is my trusty dip pen in a fine nib. I actually wonder, as I do that, I've been drying things on a paper towel, and you can use paper towel for chromatography. So I wonder, when I dry this, I'll see if I can, do a little bit there as well. So this is, how good is that crinkle? Ancient song. Might not be enough to do the chromatography, we shall see. Now, yes, I know it's a black, why isn't it in focus? Black nib section on a green pen. Having issues with one of my currently inked, and I've just swapped out a nib. So this is how this one's looking. This is a Quebeco Sport, and this nib is part of their calligraphy set. It's a 2.3 stub. So I thought we could see what it looks like if it's a bit chunky. Is it going to write at all? Just show you, I don't know if you can see that, but for me, quite clearly in the sample, it starts off a lot more shimmery versus how it ends, but the shimmer has pooled a bit on the feed there. Now, it would be running differently if it was through a cartridge converter, but just from a dip, that's what's happened, which I guess is just interesting to see. trying just a few drops to see if I can get some sort of chromatography there, or like the cheap version of chromatography. All right, so just give that one a good wash, and then we can see what that looks like. So in the fine point, there's actually, I think, a pretty impressive amount of shimmer there. Again, you can see it probably more in the ancient versus the song, but in the A, see if I can get the camera to catch it, you're getting quite a nice amount. And I kind of like, if I'm using a fine nib for a lot of journal writing, I don't want it to actually all be shimmer. So I like that it is just hints. You see it in some letters, you don't in others. Sorry, so I think that's great. When you go to the chunkier nib, you do obviously get a lot more. I mean, as that eye catches the light, it's beautiful. But again, I think this is a good representation of when you do have a lot of that shimmer, the blue undertones are less obvious. You're actually getting some quite nice shading as well. I think the S is a good example of that. And for me, the darker bits are what are looking like a really deep dark green, and the lighter bits is where I'm going to talk more about that teal family. Turning over, I mean, this is why we love Tomoe River paper, but you can hardly see anything, even with a 2.3 stub nib. And that eye, to get it going, I actually pressed quite hard and it hasn't even bled through. Let's just see. I'm pressing pretty hard here. Look, some shimmer is coming off, but I was pressing hard, let's get somewhere clean. Just running my fingers off, nothing's coming off. Let's see if this worked. It worked a little bit. So I think that's pretty much to be expected. What we're seeing in that is quite a bit of green and then some blue as well. Interestingly, it almost maybe there's like a hint of like brown, like that green in the middle looks a bit muddier, and then it goes to me to like a truer green as you move out, and then into quite a light blue actually. That's quite like a primary blue there. But I think that's to be expected, that really those are the two colours that are coming out of it. So I'm just wanting to see what time we're at. I'm like, I want this to be short, 10 minutes, and I'm at 17 minutes, 50 seconds. I'll see if I can edit some of this out. That is going to be the end of this video. That is my first deep dive into an ink. For me, this ink reads, I want to say royalty. There's something about the green and gold together that is a bit regal or royal to me, which I love. Green and gold, also I guess Aussie colours, which is always fun. This type of green I love. I love that greeny blue, teal, aqua, turquoise, all those colours I really love. I probably usually would go for something a bit darker, but for me, looking at that fine nib, I think that's dark enough to write in, but the gold shimmer brings it some character. For me, that it maybe doesn't tick the funky box, but it does tick the fun box for me. This, for me, isn't an everyday writing ink or an ink I'd use at work, but, like a heading with a whole bunch of gold shimmer for something kind of fun would be pretty cool. I think it gives it quite a bit of character, and I am looking forward to inking up a pen with this sample. All in all, I think that's a great ink and a really nice shimmer combination. Would love to know what you guys think of the video, of how I've laid it out. If you want to see more of videos like this, but also of the ink. Has anyone else tried any ancient song inks or this ink? And if you have, what pen did you pair it up with that you absolutely loved? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I can't wait to hear what you have to say and to chat to you guys all again soon. Bye.